An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds! Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 174. I'm Aaron Pellier.
And I'm Darlene.
I apologize if I stumble a little bit. I bit my tongue very badly earlier, and boy, I've gotten a swollen tongue. But we watched a movie that Darlene suggested, and I'm actually glad that she did. You suggested it because Vincent Price was in it, correct?
Yes.
Diary of a Madman from 1963.
97 minutes.
97 minutes. It's in color. It's in glorious color.
The most terrifying motion picture ever created.
No.
Based on Guy de Monepez.
I don't know, a French author from back in the day.
The short story of La Horla.
Horla. And you kept saying all the way through watching it, it's a Horda. And I'm like, no, Hordas are silicon-based life forms from Devil in the Dark, from the original series. No. Now, I had to look up what this short story was, and I guess it inspired, it may have inspired Lovecraft in some ways.
It was also something that was in Star Trek. There was an episode that kind of used it.
The Jack the Ripper episode?
I don't know. You'd have to go back on. I didn't write the notes.
So, this is a movie. There are actual things in here that we liked. There are things in here we did not. I can't judge it based on the short story, as I've never read the short story. I read the summary of the short story just very quickly to touch base on what's going on and what it changed. I guess this movie has changed quite a bit from the story, but the basic premise is still there.
The extraterrestrial mind.
It's not extraterrestrial in this movie. It specifically says it's not. It's from Earth. You pause, but like the story says it's extraterrestrial. The movie story does not. It disagrees with that. There are some people in here that we may recognize, not least of being Vincent Price. Vincent Price is always fantastic. Even in this, I think he's good. I think this is one of the lesser of the Vincent Price movies, though. We have Nancy Kovac, who is in this movie. You may not recognize her. But we sort of did, in some ways. She's actually from our neck of the woods, believe it or not. She's actually from Flint, Michigan, still alive today, and I guess is a big genius because she went to U of M when she was a teenager still, like a young teenager, won many beauty pageants. She's the female lead in this. And she's been in a few other things that we've seen, but she did a whole bunch of TV in the 50s and 60s.
I didn't know. See, the two females, I don't know which one would be considered a lead because they had both the same amount of.
Oh, really? No, I don't think so. I think Nancy Kovac definitely had more screen time.
You think she had more screen
Nancy
time?
Kovac compared to Elaine Devery. Both of these women have been in many 1950s and 60s television shows. I recognize both of them from random TV shows growing up. Like, oh, they always look familiar. In fact, I would go so far as to say most of the actors in this you will be familiar with. At least passingly, you'll go, I recognize them. The voice of the Horla, Darlene, has had a part in every Star Trek TV series from the original series all the way through Voyager, and was a background character in Star Trek Insurrection, mostly doing voice acting. But he was like one of the critters, well, people that were in that episode where they were kind of having to fight in an arena, not arena, which is like the Gorn, but I'm talking about like the slave planet where they're forced to fight. He's in that. The voice of the Horla is this guy, and you will recognize his voice if you have watched 1950s and 60s television shows. You will recognize his voice. Boy, what else do I have to say about this? For like background, $350,000 budget. So it's about, in today's money, it's about, multiply that by 10. So it's $3.5 million. Vincent Price today would never, ever take $3.5 million because in general, high-end actors are able to command far, far much larger sums. But I would say that, judging on the fact that like actors actually worked for a living back then and had to work like 10, 12 movies a year doing this kind of thing, I'm sure that Vincent Price still got paid well for this. Does this look like a $3.5 million movie today if you discount the fact that there's like an A-list actor in it? Darlene, what's your opinion?
3.5 million. What is our, no, because that would be a low budget.
That would be a very low budget movie. This does not look like a low budget movie. That's the thing. Like, this is not made by like Hammer Horror. We looked it up, made sure. But it has this sort of ambiance that Hammer Horror tends to have.
I think it's because it's taking place in 1887.
That you are likely correct. I will also say that the thing that tends to punch my buttons that says Hammer Horror is good sets and good costumes. This has good sets and good costumes. So we'll get into what works and what doesn't, but we should probably get into the plot. And again, I think this plot is confused before we get into it. And I have, again, folks, I take notes. I have 2 pages of notes. There's a ton of stuff that happens in this movie. It's pretty rapid fire for being however long it was, like 97 minutes, you said? Or...
But even though there was a lot of stuff going on, there was times when I was just tired of it.
Yes.
Tired of it.
Yes. No, you are completely correct, because I think I made that comment to you right after we got done watching. I'm like, there's a lot of stuff that happens in this film, but there's chunks of it that I felt like, going, get on with it.
Or why?
Why is this happening? Yeah. What point is there? So we start the movie with credits over a picture of a dagger, and we learn that Vincent Price is in this. Okay, so at this point with Vincent Price, I have to say that his batting average for movies that we like him in is probably still fairly high. It's probably like 3 out of 4 of the movies that we see him in are pretty damn good, if not more. But he's not like he's not constantly hitting. It's not 100% of the time at this point. So I'm like, okay, Vincent Price, we're probably in for something decent. We have a text crawl that is taken right from the original short story, which sort of spoils the movie if you haven't read the short story.
I asked you to read it because I was doing something and you didn't.
No, I didn't, because I was reading it and I didn't want to read it out loud. I was trying to concentrate on the fact that it was spoiling things. And basically, it's to sum it up, it says the Horla will enslave mankind. Okay, so here's the thing. This whole movie centers around Vincent Price being possessed, and I use lots of air quotes. Magistrate
that is possessed
by this Horla.
Yes, and doing some of the stuff.
Is he possessed? And this is where the movie says he's possessed. We just randomly talking about this movie say he's possessed.
Okay, at certain points, the Horla is in control.
Yes. But a lot of the times, the Horla is just an independent actor allowing Vincent Price's character to just do whatever. It doesn't matter. because the Horla. Here's the weird thing, and I know I'm not talking about the plot yet. Vincent Price's character, Magistrate Simon Cordier or whatever,
Courtier.
He in general has very, very little agency throughout this entire movie. The only point in which he has agency is right at the end. So he doesn't really feel like a character. Like literally everything is out of his control. Everything that he does in this movie is effectively influenced by the Horla.
I wouldn't say everything.
Effectively everything. Not everything, not 100% of everything. There's still small choices that don't matter that the Horla doesn't force him into. Okay, so I'll point those out as we go through this movie. I know you're scowling and thinking. There are choices in here that are his, but they don't matter to the end of the film.
And it does make up one question of would you consider somebody that pushes someone to suicide because they want to escape their life with the person? Does that make that person a murderer?
Oh.
That is one of the things that it does bring up.
No, I would argue no, it does not. It makes you a bad person. It makes you an abuser. Yes. But it doesn't make you a murderer, because the person who commits suicide still has the choice to commit suicide or not. That being said, there are no heroes in this movie. There are no white hats.
Maybe that's what's bothering me the most.
Again, there's a lot of these that we've been watching lately. There are no good people in them. Well, no, I take it back. There are side characters in this that are white hats.
Perry and the housekeeper.
Pierre and the housekeeper.
The butler and the cook.
The priest.
Yeah.
But these are all side characters.
There's also
theoretically the cop is a good guy in this, right? Like the police officer.
He's just doing his job, so you don't know whether he's good or bad or whatever.
Yeah. But like the only characters that truly seem
Mr. D'Arvel.
Oh, you mean
Gina's father?
Okay. Janine.
He is like the police captain. You can't tell at this point, but he seems to be a good character.
Okay, so let's get back into the plot. We start with a funeral in France. And by the way, this spoils the movie. We already had the text crawl that spoils the movie. We are then told what happens at the end of the movie. And that pisses me off something fierce. So there's a funeral in France. We learn that a magistrate has died. A priest says that he was a good man. No, he wasn't. The priest is lying here to not speak ill of the dead. Because it's clear, everyone that's at this funeral that's still alive, when we get to the end of the film, we know they all know that this guy is a dick. Anyway, a woman says that she's glad he's dead, and that is Janine D'Arvel. That's the woman who says, I'm glad he's dead.
But she's not a good character either.
You say that. I actually think she's okay. She doesn't do anything negative. She's only trying to be a protective force with the man that she actually loves. Anyway, a few people are invited back to an art gallery for a reading of a will or something like that. And it turns out that the magistrate thought he was going to die and left this chest that contains a diary and a note and warns about a coming disaster. Like that there's this evil force in the world called the Horla, and it's going to destroy us all. Okay? So the people that are in this room are like the police officer, Janine, Paul's there, and is the butler and the maid.
The butler and the maid
are there.
The butler and the cook.
So we flash back. So So we know that the magistrate is dead. He died in a fire. One person thinks he was a piece of crap, at the very least. But again, like I said, later on at the end of this film, we understand that they all know he's a bad person. Okay? So we know how the movie's going to end, and that the Horla is trying to enslave mankind. And here's the thing, according to what is read, the problem of the Horla has not been solved. Spoiler, it was solved. But for whatever reason, everyone believes it's not solved. So now we go flashing back as we read this diary of the magistrate, played by Vincent Price, and it's like September 1876.
September 17th.
And we show him, this local cop, talking to him, and a man is going to the guillotine and wants to talk to the magistrate. And and Vincent Price says, "Oh, we're going. I guess it's because he's going to confess. Because at some point, everyone that's facing the guillotine
killed 4 women.
He killed 4 women. But anyone that's facing the guillotine might want to confess before they meet God. So he goes down to the jail, and this guy's alone. He asks, I'm just going to talk to him alone. The guy says that, hey, look, man, there was this thing called the Horla. It was possessing me, making me do all these things. And his eyes start to glow, and he tries to kill the magistrate. He ends up just dying, sort of. I don't understand how he died. He just kind of falls over. It's not like Vincent Price really attacked this guy or defended himself very much. It's just this guy kind of fell over. I don't know.
Hit his head or something.
The fight was very underwhelming. Let's put it that way. He ends up dying, so he no longer needs the guillotine, and there seems to be kind of a lighthearted comment about this murderer getting off easy. A few days later, Vincent Price comes home and finds a photo on the wall that he had taken down of his wife and son. This wife and son thing is some bullshit. This is some real bullshit. Okay? And I think we need to cover this now. What happened to his son, Darlene?
We don't know what had happened to his son.
Yep.
His son died at a young age, and then his wife
committed suicide because he blamed her for his son's death and made her life miserable to the point that she took her own life. Maybe he feels guilty about it. He doesn't show it.
But the Horla might be using his guilt and his point of view. He might feel very guilty of it and didn't really contribute to it as much as he thinks he does. You don't know. These are possibilities.
It's not explained. All we know is that he doesn't want a visual reminder of his family around.
And it happened some 12 years ago.
Yes, and the room where he spent a lot of time with his wife, which seemingly was their bedroom, but also is the sculpting room.
No, there's a sculpting room.
It was the same set. To me, it was the same set. It was just dressed differently. It looks the same.
It could be the same set, but it's supposed to be a whole different room.
So they died. We don't really know anything about it. He bitches at his butler and housekeeper, saying that they put this picture back up. So he goes into this disused part of the house. He puts this picture away in a chest that is filled with young boys' clothes and women's clothes. This room has obviously not been kept up. It is cobwebby.
It is
dusty.
It is the attic.
Yeah. In this room, we see written in dust right by a bust of his wife that he sculpted. See, this is what I'm saying. It's the same room. It says, "Hatred is evil," written in the dust. Okay.
But then when Pierre comes up, it's not written.
It's not written there. So guess what? The Horla made Vincent Price see hatred is evil. What does the Horla represent, Darlene?
Total evil.
It represents hatred. So it considers itself evil, even though in the rest of the movie, it doesn't. It doesn't see itself as evil. It just sees itself as something. It doesn't really have clear motives. Obviously, Vincent Price sees it as evil. But what's its motive? Just to play?
Sick madness.
I don't think it's a sick madness. Everything is very calculated.
Do you think it's very calculated like the master would be?
The master is crazy.
Mad?
No, this is calculated like it knows what it's doing.
Madness.
Well, it knows what it's doing. It wants to do it. It doesn't see anything wrong with it.
So
and
sociopath.
Yeah. But not evil. The only time
it likes to torture people with their own emotions.
Sure, but that's their fault, not his. I don't know. Like a lot of this movie, what makes it kind of is these questions that constantly get raised while you're watching it. So,
but he asked for the trial testimony of
No, he didn't ask for it. That's the point. He comes into his office the next day and he sees that trial testimony just sitting on his desk. Okay, here again, we should make very clear the Horla is moving things around, not using Vincent Price's body. He's not using, because the Horla doesn't have to possess anybody. It just exists. It is a physical being that exists. Okay? There's a point in this movie in which it stands between Vincent Price and a mirror. So Vincent Price cannot see his reflection in the mirror, but he can see the reflection of the room. How that makes sense, I have no idea. It is a physical presence. It has no need to possess anybody. Now, in the short story, I'm actually sure that it doesn't have a physical presence. Or at the very least, it is like a mist in the books. That's what it came across when I read the summary, that it's some sort of mist. It can't really move things, but it does exist.
But it's definitely moving things. It's writing stuff in that. It moved the picture to the wall.
It can move large weights. It can move large mounds of soil and things. It is a powerful being. Well, anyway, this is out on his desk, and something picks up an inkwell while he's in his office and spills it, and we hear this laughing, disembodied voice. And it starts speaking to Vincent, telling him that his body and mind will be taken by him, by the Horla. Later that night, it forces him to kill his pet bird. Like, he takes this beautiful little songbird out of a cage, which is far too small for that bird. Can I make that comment? That cage was far too small for that bird.
A very Victorian age.
But very ornate bird cage. And he like crushes it in his hands while his eyes glow,
but
being possessed.
Simon starts to write the diary before then.
Yeah. So, oh boy. Okay, so he ends up going to see a psychiatrist of sorts, or let's just say a medical doctor. And the medical doctor says, hey, you've been blaming yourself for the deaths in your family. Spoiler, he has every right to blame himself for it. And that he's been holding his grief back, and it's coming out in this really strange way.
Unlike me, I don't know if this is all, the mind. His mind is guilty of it. Whether he actually was that shitty of a person to create.
And here's another thought. It's entirely possible this Horla thing is entirely a psychotic break. That this is all in his head. Like this guy.
It's been two people.
No. He heard the story from this guy that's blaming it on a thing called the Horla. And full on goes into this kind of derangement where he's blaming all this shit on the Horla. It's entirely possible that's the case. Because remember, it's not like anybody else has any evidence that this Horla exists. Right? The only thing that says this Horla exists besides what we see Vincent Price's character seeing, which all could be a psychotic break, is the diary that he wrote saying that this was true. Like, that's it. Like, all right. So anyway, back to the plot.
So
he
the
ends up,
doctor asked him to start doing his art again.
yeah, why don't you go find a hobby, you sicko? And he's like, oh yeah, I used to be a sculptor. And so he goes into this like art district of Paris and sees a painting of a ballerina. It is actually a very good painting. Am I correct in saying that?
It's okay.
Yeah, it's a nice painting. And it is a painting of a ballerina that is actually a character named Odette Malot who has posed for this. That is Nancy Kovac from Flint, Michigan.
For her husband, that's the painter.
For her husband, the painter Paul Duclos. Odette never took his last name. That's why there's some confusion in there. Because that would have been a very rare thing at the time, not taking your husband's last name. Regardless, no shame in that.
That's her middle name.
You
that
think?
You're saying, yeah.
You think? Okay.
Because they did call her Miss
Duclos.
Yes.
Anyway, he stops and she's standing outside saying, hey, you know what? That's a really beautiful painting, isn't it? And he's like, yes, it is. And would you like to meet the model that posed? And she kind of puts her face in the same kind of pose. She is a very attractive woman. And he's taken with her because she is oozing charisma. Now, here's the point where we stop and go, do they have chemistry together on screen? Do Vincent Price and Nancy Kovac have chemistry on screen? No.
But when he was walking to the place in the artist district,
yes,
he kept on noticing the females that were laughing and
having a good
flirting
time
and stuff like that,
enjoying the day. Mm-hmm. So it's clear that she's kind of seeing this guy like looking at women, and I don't think he's looking lustfully at them. He's just noticing them, and it's probably because there hasn't been a woman in his life, and he misses that from his wife. He needs to find another woman to blame for another death and drive them to suicide.
Aaron, we don't know if that's the case.
I know, that was me being snarky. And he basically says, hey, have you modeled for a sculptor before? And she's like, oh, okay, here we go. You're going to take me up to see your etchings and you're going to try to get my corset off. You know, that's kind of what's obviously going through her head, right? Nancy Kovac is good enough that you get that just from her side eyes and like attitude.
But she really don't care. She probably already noticed him looking at all the females. And had probably looked at him for his cost of his cane,
So she basically says, fine, if I'm going to model, you'll have to hire me. How much are you willing to pay? And he goes, 10 francs an hour. And her mouth basically just hits the floor because I guess that's an incredible amount of money.
Especially since her husband in the next
conversation
only gets 8 francs.
10 francs. He actually sold a painting of a sailboat for 10 francs. And she's like, well, when he says 10 francs, she says, when can I start? Okay. Now, does she look like she's hard up for money?
No.
Does he look like, her husband, look like he's hard up for money?
Yes.
Nah, more so than her, but no. He has a nice suit. He's well groomed. He has his own store.
Yes, but no, this is not his own store. This is a gallery.
It is his own gallery.
Because I think this is Devella.
It's supposed to be his gallery. He owns this. This is where he's selling things. Now, mind you, I think that this gallery has almost made them destitute opening it up, but it is his. Okay.
I always got it was somebody else's.
So that night she ends up going to Vincent's house, and he takes her upstairs to the room in order to start sketching her for this sculpture that he's going to do. And he titles it The Laughing Woman, because there's no more true beauty in the world than a woman laughing, and not laughing scornfully, but laughing with joy. And she holds a pose for a little bit, and he's like, oh, that's perfect. Exactly. And as Nancy Kovac was an actual like beauty queen, she actually knows how to hold herself in such a way as to be stunning even in repose. Let's put it that way. Like she can just hold a pose.
But she didn't hold the pose.
No. but you see her kind of going through the steps of going, what would look best for what
She
he's
put
trying to do.
herself in the light.
She put herself in the light. She takes her hair down and makes it go a certain way. She cocks her head a certain way to get the light. Like, I think the actress knew and a bit, and then obviously whoever was the director of photography or the producer there was like, no, we need to add this, and she made it better. I'm saying that she added to the scene in a positive way. The artwork is helping Vincent cheer up, and this is like time is passing here. We learned that Vincent's wife took her own life at this point, and after a long conversation with Odette, he's unable to see himself in the mirror. This is where like the Horla is.
It was the sculpture is done.
Yeah, the sculpture is done, and it's a very good sculpture. Whoever the artist was on this production did a very good job. There's a sculpture of Vincent's dead wife as well that is, again, very well done. I thought all the art in this was actually pretty good. And
It's the same bust that was in the attic.
Yeah, now see, the Horla says that it lives on Earth and is only able to exist in this same plane of existence us humans exist in when evil has occurred. Okay, so remember, he wrote down hatred is evil. He exists because of evil, but is not evil.
What is Simon hating?
Himself?
That's the only thing I can think of. And this makes all your comments about him going and taking his, pushing his wife to suicide, that makes me think no.
No, I think he did, and he hates himself for it. Because everybody
Maybe
else,
he was distant to her.
That is also possible, but
and he just lost his child, so at that point
she needed him. He pushed her away. She committed suicide. But I mean, that's still the same kind of thing. He might not have been as actively abusive, but he still contributed to her sadness and grief.
But like you said before, he didn't commit the murder.
No, he did not. He did not. That there is still a choice to be made in a suicide.
But the Horla at this time accuses Simon of murdering his wife.
Yep.
By him accusing her of their son's death.
Yes, and it lifts this picture of his wife and child out of the crate and breaks it, and then changes the sculpture of the laughing woman into a sculpture of her like scowling.
You see evil in everything.
Yeah, you see evil in everything. And here's the thing. Vincent wasn't seeing evil in Odette.
No.
But the Horla makes him see it in her by convincing him to have an affair with her and breaking up her marriage to her husband. Like, this is...
when the sculpture changes to how she is, that's how she looked like to her husband when he was like, I don't want you to go there and do this. Her
a man who's willing to pay 10 francs an hour has other things on his mind. Right? Like, that's kind of what it came across as. And while Vincent didn't have that on his mind, he has that on his mind after this. Not because the Horla's possessing him to, because he chooses to do it. And this is why I constantly say that I've been saying, like, yeah, no, Vincent's a bad guy. He is not being possessed by the Horla 100% of this movie. In fact, he's only possessed for, like, let's say 5% of it. And only to, like, force him to pick things up. Like, all the decisions that he makes in this movie are his and his alone.
I'd have to rewatch it.
Yeah, maybe. So, it turns out that Vincent goes back to this gallery, buys the ballerina painting for like 100 francs. Which seems like that's a big ripoff for the quality of the painting and its size, because it's a large painting. It actually does look good. And brings Odette there to see the painting and basically like impress upon her, look how wealthy I am. I bought your painting and I've put it up in my drawing room because I took down all the pictures of women in my house because I was so ashamed of my wife. and even the butler and the maid are like, wow, I didn't know. I thought I'd never see the day when there was a painting of another woman in this house.
But I don't think that he realizes she's married at that point.
You're right. He does not. I agree with that. He does not know she's married.
Because
She knows she's married.
He even gets to the point where he asks her to marry him.
Yes, and she
I
does
do
not.
not think that he knew at that time until her husband.
Darlene, I guarantee you are correct. He did not know at that point that she was married. I agree. You are correct. But what the evil is there is that she does not inform him. She just agrees to the marriage because she sees it as a way to move up the social ladder, or to
luxury,
to have these luxury items that are around. So
and you obviously see that she doesn't really love her husband either.
And he ends up giving her the cameo necklace, like the amulet, the brooch
that
he had given his wife. So it's like the it's a little cameo that has like the silhouette. It's one of those Victorian kind of cameos.
Mm-hmm.
It's the silhouette of his dead wife.
Was it?
Yeah. That's a little messed up, right?
If that was, because I didn't see it.
Okay, and that's fair. I might have just put that in my own head. Let's be fair. I'm an unreliable narrator at times. I'll be honest. I thought that it looked like there was a silhouette, and why would he have a woman's brooch with a silhouette on it other than his wife's? Because it's not like guys would give a wife their own silhouette. That just wasn't the style.
Could be his grandmother. It could be...
you're right. It could be his mother or something like that. That's fair. We don't know. But all we know is that he had given it to his wife. Now he's giving it to Odette. So we now jump ahead some time again. And Paul knows something's wrong. He's talking to Janine.
His friend
Janine, who clearly cares for him. But because he's married, she has always stayed away. He knows something's wrong. Boy, I can't really figure out what it is. She's left and gotten her own apartment and has been hanging around with the magistrate a lot. Yeah, obviously something's wrong, Paul. She's moved out. She's not talking to you. She's sleeping with the magistrate. Okay, so anyway.
We can't guarantee it's that. Yeah.
In fact, the magistrate's paying for this apartment because she doesn't have any of her own money. She's a kept woman. Yeah, you're nodding. This is an audio podcast. You can go, yeah, okay. I see what you're saying.
Keep going.
All right. So Odette says that this wedding should wait to be announced until after she deals with Paul. And then Vincent finds out Paul, the artist, is Odette's husband at this point. And he's like, oh, he doesn't call anything off. He doesn't feel bad that he's been sleeping with a married woman. He's just like, oh, Paul's here. He showed up to talk to me. Bring him in. And he acts like there's nothing wrong in the world. She's made her choice. I have no fucking problems. Excuse my language. This is where I get really ticked with Vincent Price's character because he clearly is not possessed right now by the Horla.
No.
But is acting like a complete homewrecker shitheel. And this is where I started kind of like disconnecting from the movie and like engaged in it. I was still watching and taking notes, but it was like, I don't care what happens to him. Here, up until that point, you could make the argument that Vincent Price's character is he's a victim of circumstance. That a lot of this is, yes, he's making bad choices, but it's not like he really knows that anything is specifically wrong with Odette or what's going on with Odette. He now knows that this is all bad. And then Paul says, I could kill you now for what you're doing. And I had to pause the movie. I go, Darlene, Crime of Passion, you even looked this up, right? In France at the time.
Say it puts it as manslaughter,
which is not murder.
It is a type of murder.
Manslaughter is accidental death. It basically means you're
It's
not going to go to the guillotine.
premeditated.
Yeah, if Paul would have just pulled a knife and stabbed Vincent Price through the heart right there, guess what? Manslaughter at best.
Still go to prison.
Yeah, but not the guillotine. That's the thing. And
But you'd have to confess them.
Him saying, I could kill you right now, makes it not a crime of passion. It makes it premeditated. So, Paul, you just screwed yourself there, man. You could have just stabbed him through the heart. Been done with it. But nope. So, let's see here. Horla says, at this point, the Horla says that Vincent will kill Paul to end his agony about loving Odette. Because Paul is such a piece of crap because he loves his wife. Without reservation. Okay, fine. So then Paul confronts...
Well, we know the horror at this point.
The Horla's
we
a piece
know
of crap,
that
too.
horror is a lying piece of shit.
Yeah. So Paul confronts Odette in her kept woman's apartment, and he leaves knowing that he's a fool, and then Vincent is a fool just as much as he is, because he knows at this point that she's just a gold digger, basically. That, you know what, I'm done with you, Odette. I'm done. And you know what? It's just going to take time before he figures out how bad of a person you are, too. Well, it turns out it doesn't take very long at all. Vincent's waiting on the steps. This is where
I think he's possessed.
He is possessed at this point, because we do see his eyes glowing. He has like this glowing green Kirk light thing on him. And he walks up with a knife, pulls it out, murders Odette in her kept woman's apartment, leaving an immense amount of forensic evidence if this was the 20th century, but it's not. So he leaves bloody footprints, a bloody trail. He severs her head and doesn't remember any of it. The Horla puts her severed head in the sculpture of the laughing woman.
Don't know how.
Well, the Horla is a physical being. It can just put her head inside there and then redo the sculpture around it. We see him manipulate the sculpture prior to this. So where am I? Let's see here. Paul is framed for the murder, and the Horla has Vincent disposed...
Because the knife is in his apartment.
Because the Horla put it there.
Mm-hmm.
And Vincent disposes of the head in a grave that's been dug in the garden, and then he...
By the compensation of the Horla.
Yeah, because he's not possessed. Remember, at this point, he knows that under the influence of the Horla, he has killed Odette. He is the guilty party. Okay? He also knows that Paul has been nabbed for the murder, and he does nothing to stop it. In fact, he's okay with Paul.
There was a discussion between him and the Horla about that.
Yeah, and then he's just like, fine, whatever. I don't care. Let Paul go to the guillotine. But that's
because the Horla was convinced him that something was going to take place, or...
Yeah, that he was going to get away with it. And all it took was Paul's death at the guillotine. That's the thing. Like, Vincent Price's character, Magistrate Simon, is a piece of crap. Every time he is actually given a choice to do the right thing, he doesn't. He actually does the wrong thing, the morally bad.
I don't think the Horla would allow him to do things outside of the way that he's.
You are correct, but he doesn't even try. That's the thing. He doesn't even struggle.
Well, he does try to commit suicide.
Yeah, after all of this.
And the Horla does not allow him to commit suicide.
Yeah, the Horla does not allow him to commit suicide. And in fact knocks the gun away. But at this point, we learn that Vincent has had a really good plan. He has doused his entire study in kerosene.
Oh, you forgot about Paul's talk to Jeanette. And they actually kiss.
Yeah, because Odette's dead, and now they can be together even if it's for a few moments before he dies at the guillotine. He does not die at the guillotine, by the way, because Vincent lights up his whole freaking study, locking him and the Horla in there. And the Horla dies in like a brilliant green flash of light. Like he sets himself on fire in these flames. Vincent wants to escape, but he drops the key and he dies. Timbers fall on top of him. And that's it. That's like, we go back to the end, the beginning of the movie now that, they're all sitting around going, wow, maybe he wasn't a piece of crap. No, he was. Even according to his own diary, since this is obviously all told from his point of view, he doesn't cover up the fact.
There's something to deal with the priest the priest is in danger, so Simon leaves to ask the priest to bring Jeanette there.
Yeah.
And that's when he gives her the box with the information, and he plans to do burning the
So the
Horda.
question is
Horla.
how do we know that Vincent killed the Horla, since he didn't write that in his diary? We see him not write anything after a certain
We
point.
don't know.
No one knows. I guess we're just shown this because of whatever, even though this entire movie is told as a retelling of what his diary is. It's a mess. This whole movie's a mess at the end. So I've talked about a lot what works, what doesn't. Darlene, what's your top thing that works?
Good acting, good sets, boring.
Yeah, good acting. Vincent Price, even though I don't like this movie, Vincent Price elevates it from I will never watch this again to I'm going to remember it. I might not watch it again, but I'm going to remember it. Nancy Kovac as Odette. She's a piece of crap character, a good actress. I liked Paul, played by Chris Warfield, who was in everything in the 1950s
I think
and 60s.
one of the big problems is you don't feel sympathetic with any character.
No, even Paul. Like Paul, but he is such a side character. Like he might be the most sympathetic of the people that actually have dialogue on screen for, let's say, more than one scene. But he's just kind of a victim rather than a person taking active interest in his own story, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Oh, in Crosses takes the
Oh
possession
God,
out
that
of it.
thing. Yeah, Vincent sees a freaking crucifix reflected in the dagger, and he's able to like throw it away at one point because I guess Christ dispels the Horla. Man. So okay, the acting is great, the sets are great, the costumes I think are, let's say, pretty good if not very good. I won't say excellent, but pretty good or to very good. I really liked the artwork, the paintings and the sculptures in this. Clearly, somebody was skilled that did them. Okay, I'm gonna give the movie credit for that. I'll even give the movie credit for proper lighting and editing. The plot is just, I don't. It's not awful. It's just that it's badly paced. It's badly thought out. I think it's badly converted from the short story to the screen. I don't think it's done properly. I think you likely could do this far better than it was. Do you have thoughts here? Speak up. I mean,
I think it would have been better off as an extraterrestrial mind.
a disembodied mind coming down.
Yeah. And when it doesn't need to possess you, it doesn't have to.
Yeah. I also think that Vincent Price's character needed to have more agency. Like, honestly, everything when he's very rarely possessed, but even when he's not possessed, he's still making evil choices.
And he's supposed to be a magistrate.
He's supposed to be a moral person who people look up to as being moral.
Yes. So they should have had him struggling more with this.
He doesn't struggle at all. Like he doesn't want to kill anybody, but he has no problem with Paul going to the guillotine.
The characters don't.
They don't add up.
Yes.
They don't add up. Like, okay, Odette is always supposed to have been a piece of crap. She's a piece of crap. It makes sense, but I don't sympathize with her. I think she's an interesting foil if Vincent Price's character, Magistrate Simon, was actually struggling, because half of this could be like Odette whispering in his ear and like tempting him. And then the other half of it could be the Horla doing it, which would have been an interesting pyramid of evil trying to like make this man fall from his position of moral certitude. But they don't do that. He just is a bad person. I think that would have been much better with Odette like tempting him.
I don't think I have anything else to say.
No, really?
No.
Do you recommend this movie?
No.
No, I don't either. But what's your 1 out of 10 to like kind of give a indication of how
4.
A 4? So it's not like awful.
No.
No. See,
But it's not even... I could actually put it on a 5.
Oh.
Maybe.
Oh, really? Okay.
But it's just average. But the problem I have with doing that is that it didn't give Simon Cordier there was no fight between the two.
There's no agency.
Yeah.
There's
and that makes it go down to a 4.
I would say this is a 3.5 because this is a movie in which the plot is silly and bad enough that I could mute it, and the movie's not any worse, but it's also not any, it doesn't make it any worse. It might actually even make it better muting it, so you don't hear the nonsense. You don't really truly understand why that these characters really don't have any agency with what they're doing. If you did not hear any of the dialogue, you might actually believe that Vincent Price's character is possessed for this entire movie, and that's why he's making these terrible choices. That he's dead mentally, and this is just the Horla making him do all these things, and just that makes the movie better. Just that simple change. I don't know. I was disappointed in it because I tend to think...
I think it's kind of terrifying to think that something could manipulate you.
Yeah.
And take over for just a small... and make you do something that is totally against your character.
Yes, but it's
but
when
they
he's
didn't
not.
show it in this at all.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. That idea, you are completely correct. That idea is a good and interesting idea to explore because that is kind of scary. That is a scary thought. Here's the thing that makes you just kill somebody that you love, and then it disappears, and you're left with the consequences. The thing is that the Horla does this, and it doesn't seem to matter. This is an event that happened. Now we're moving on. And I don't like that. It makes it not a horror movie. It makes it just kind of this. It makes it nothing. There's no horror in
drama.
This. Yeah, there's no horror in this because at the only thing that I could ever actually even say is a horror is the tiny bit of body horror that is, there's this disembodied head that he finds buried beneath the clay of the sculpture. But that would be only really meaningful if you thought that Vincent actually cared, which maybe he doesn't. It's not clear that he does. Or you cared about Odette and you felt awful that she died, but you don't because she's an evil person too. This isn't that great. It's not that great. So I think maybe we should leave it there. Next week, folks, is episode 175, and I have to go back through my notes because we recorded it already, and it is going to be a guest host, Charles Wilson again, and we are doing Mothra versus Godzilla from 1964. So tune in knowing that is our next movie, and I hope you enjoy it. So I'm Aaron.
I'm Darlene. Good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.